you looking for a different level of truth about your challenges and struggles? Then be a part of the Yes and podcast, hosted by empowerment strategist and trauma specialist Jennifer Whitacre. Every Wednesday, we challenge conventional thinking on topics like trauma, healing, and so much more. Learn life lessons and great nuggets of wisdom from guests who've moved through their pain and suffering to discover a new purpose in life. Now, here's your host, Jennifer Whitacre.
Hi, everybody. This is Jennifer Whitacre, and we are recording another episode of Yes and. I am here with Rabbi Shlomo Slatkin, and Rabbi Slatkin is a relationship expert and a public speaker who has helped thousands of couples repair their broken marriages. Together with his wife, Rivka, he is the founder of the Marriage Restoration Project, which is a global initiative to help keep couples together and happy. Rabbi Slatkin is a licensed clinical professional counselor, a certified imago relationship therapist, a rabbi, and a father of 5. He is an advanced clinician in imago therapy. He is also the author of the 5-Step Action Plan to a Happy and Healthy Marriage, which is the introduction to Rabbi Slatkin's marriage counseling approach, with its foundational basics and its short transformational benefits. And today, one of the topics that we're going to be talking about is personal growth, and how personal growth is easy to do when you're on your own. So many of us go out in the world and we go to retreats and we have these personal transformative experiences at retreats. And then we come home and we're around our family and it just feels like we lose it. And it's harder to maintain when you're in the same environment around people who haven't had a transformative experience in their life. So it can be so much harder when you're around your family, your spouse, and the timeliness of this conversation is we have Thanksgiving and other holiday family gatherings coming up in the near future. So Rabbi Slatkin, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be your guest.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have this conversation because I know when you and I had talked a few weeks ago about doing this, I had just come off of a family gathering myself, and I came back going, oh my gosh, what happened to me? I do so well when I'm on my own, and you put me in the midst of my family, and I lose it. It's like every dysfunction just crawls out of the woodwork again.
Sure, yeah. Relationships are hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're much harder than it's wonderful to do the self-growth, and it's on your own. But once you start having to deal with other people and they push your buttons, that's really the kind of litmus test to see if you've how far you've come.
Exactly. So could you give us a little bit of insight into family relationships and why that happens?
Sure. So I can start first just giving you, if you'd like me just to tell in general about like the imago approach in terms of the couple, okay, and then to see how that relates, also how that can relate to the family.
Yeah, if that makes sense to start there, please do. Sure. Absolutely.
So just to understand the relational paradigm, Dr. Harville Hendricks, who founded imago therapy, he writes about this in his book, Getting the Love You Want. But the essence is that we are all born in a relationship. You're born in your mother's womb. You're connected deeply, and even after you're born, if the baby's nursing, then eventually, at some point, the baby is weaned. They kind of go out on their own, and we're always looking to get back in relationships, so that we're ultimately looking to find a deep relationship with someone else. So that's your partner, your spouse that the person marries, or in general, we are craving for connection with other individuals. The idea of connection is really what reality is all about. We are all connected in one way or the other, even if we're not married to somebody. We are the world. We're all interconnected. The idea that we're separate is an illusion, and we get ourselves in trouble in the world with all the discord that we have politically and in this country and all over the world. Just the fact that we're separate, that we're different, and we are all unique individuals, but we all also are connected, and we don't really focus so much on that connection, and that's kind of what leads us astray. So in a relationship, we're looking for, at least, and we're just talking about the committed relationship right now, that the theory is that we are all looking for our imago, and the idea is that imago means image, but we have an unconscious image of the ideal partner. And that
Mhm.
unconscious image is going to be a composite of the positive and negative characteristics of our primary caretakers. So meaning we're going to look for someone who's very similar, who's going to remind us of our childhood, so that we can actually, as we say, marriage is the unfinished business of childhood. It's an opportunity to get it right, to kind of do it over again.
Mhm.
And even if we had a challenging childhood, even though we would think, why would anybody in their right mind want to go back to a painful experience? But the idea is that marriage is also for the purpose of growth and healing. So it's an opportunity to do it right. And the fact that we were wounded in connection, in relationship, the only way to truly heal that is in relationship. So a person
Yes.
can do all the growth they want, and the self-help industry is booming, and it's very popular, and it's wonderful that people are doing all the personal growth. But what's the part that I feel that people are missing, and this is something that I see, especially with people who are very advanced in personal growth, and they do the couples work either privately with me or in our workshop, and they have a really hard time doing it.
Mhm.
And it's kind of surprising because we'd think, you know, you're so elevated, you're so conscious, um, you should really be able to get this. But the
Yeah.
challenge
It's
is that,
one thing to
yeah,
understand the concept, it's another thing entirely to put it into practice
right,
and apply
right,
it in your life.
right, to live it, and
Yes.
especially when someone's pushing your buttons. And we believe in Imago that your spouse is the one who's going to push your buttons unlike anyone else, because that's the
Yes.
opportunity to kind of do it over and heal. Because
Mhm.
once we get unlocked in our power struggle with our spouse, and we see that, oh, it's really our childhood that you're triggering. Yeah, you might be doing, we say, the 10-90-10 rule. We say 10% is what your spouse is doing, but 90% what it's evoking for you. So relationships, any the committed relationship can be a very triggering thing. And even taking it out to other relationships, um, well, of course, if you have these issues with your parents and you felt wounded growing up, or you had unmet needs,
Mhm.
they could push your buttons. And just extended family or children, even, that they're also going to remind you of some of the issues. So it's almost it's amazing that the conflict that we wind up having in the world, this could be in the workplace, this could be with our family, siblings. If we learn about the things that really bother us, we say if it's hysterical, it's historical. So
Mhm.
it's more about our own issues as opposed to what the other person is doing to us. And the problem is that we don't realize that. We tend to just focus on the other person who's bothering us, and we put the blame on them. And
Yeah.
when we act and we don't get along with them. And obviously we can't control how other people behave, but we can control our own reactions. And that's what the work that we teach couples, and that's how this applies to any relationship, that learning about yourself and learning how to be able to make a conscious choice to behave differently.
Mhm.
Because otherwise you're just, with all the self-growth that you might know, you're not able to go beyond yourself. It's self-growth growth becomes selfish.
Mhm. Yeah. So, how can we apply this for those of us who aren't married or aren't in a relationship? How can we apply this just around our family in general?
So even if you're not in a relationship, we,
Mhm.
we are in relationship with other individuals, unless you're living
Mhm.
in isolation. You're going to
True.
interact, and people will push your buttons, and you may notice certain themes in your life, in your relationships. Why is it that we tend to blame, oh, this person did this to me and this person did that to me, and they're
Mhm.
thinking about, is there a pattern here? What can we gain insight? So one thing to learn that we can do besides just being aware of the patterns is just to understand how people work, and how people respond and react when they're not feeling safe.
Mhm.
We talk a lot about this. This is something that's applies to all relationships. Emotional safety.
Mhm.
We all need to be emotionally safe to really be in a relationship with someone other than ourselves. If we don't feel safe, then we go into reactivity mode. There's a model of the brain called the triune brain, and it breaks the brain into three parts. The brain stem, that's we call the reptilian brain. That's the part of your brain that just modulates your breathing and keeps you alive.
Mhm.
And that's very, like, just like a reptile. They have no emotions or cognitions. It's just reaction.
Mhm.
And that's where we go when we're under stress.
Yes.
We'll go back to that in just a moment. Then we have our middle brain, the limbic system, the emotional brain, and then the prefrontal cortex and the frontal cortex, the logic part of our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to really act in whole brain integration, be able to interact with a person in a healthy way, we need to access our whole brain. But if we are feeling stressed or triggered, we go right to that brainstem. So if you're in an interaction with a family member or a boss or a coworker, and you're noticing yourself feeling uncomfortable, your brain is you are in that brainstem, and the brainstem's sole goal is to stay alive and survive.
Mm-hmm.
And that means you're not able to think about really have empathy for the other person's feelings or compassion, understand where they're coming from, or think logically maybe a way to resolve this conflict or to talk about this topic with this other person. You're just focusing on feeling safe and staying alive. And you go into reactivity mode. And there are one or two ways which we tend to react based on how we learned growing up to survive. We call this minimizing or maximizing. We either minimize our energy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's we contract within ourselves. We either freeze or we submit. We liken this to a turtle. And then maximizing energy, where when we feel unsafe, our energy pushes outward. So that means we either fight or we flee, fight or flight. So
Okay.
even those people that run away, they're also maximizing because they're pushing it out as opposed to bringing it in. And we call that in Imago hailstorms, like hail.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a story. If you imagine a couple, or it doesn't have to be a couple, any two people, the hailstorm would like to speak to the turtle, wants the turtle's attention. So they rain hail down on the turtle's shell. So of course, no one likes to feel hail banging down on their shell. So the turtle, instead of engaging and sticking his head out, he withdraws and retreats within.
Mm-hmm.
The hailstorms said, "What's going on here? I'm trying to get your attention. Where are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And so the hailstorm gets louder and bangs even more hail. How do you think the turtle responds? By retreating even more.
Right.
At some point, the turtle becomes a snapping turtle. They just, these quiet people that might
Mm-hmm.
seem very, passive, and then all of a sudden they get really angry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the dynamic that happens in relationships. We tend to be drawn towards people who have the opposite adaptation, meaning that, and we see that in relationships, and we'll go back to relationships, we see people that the person who's the turtle tends to be attracted to a hailstorm. So what happens is the more that the turtle needs to feel safe and go into the shell, the louder the hailstorm gets, the more
Mm-hmm.
outward the hailstorm gets. And the idea is just that we can think about this, and maybe I'm saying this bias as the turtle. It's normal. We feel like, of course, it's unsafe if somebody's really loud and aggressive and scary, but it's as equally unsafe for the hailstorm when they're not noticed. So
Mm-hmm.
if you think about growing up, if you grew up in a home where nobody really cared about you, nobody noticed you, you felt all alone, and your needs weren't getting met. So
Mm-hmm.
some people, they need to make a lot of noise in order to, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. They need to make a lot of noise to get their needs met. But
Right.
that's how they got safe. They survived by getting big and making
Mm-hmm.
noise or running. You have other people, though, that survive by just kind of freezing and submitting, going inward. It
Mm-hmm.
was just too chaotic, and the only way to control their surroundings was to go within.
Mm-hmm.
What happens as an adult, those things helped us growing up. They helped us stay alive, but they actually do the opposite as an adult. So in
Mm-hmm.
your interactions with people, if you notice someone triggering you, you're going to likely go into either one of those two adaptations, into the minimizing adaptation or the turtle, or the maximizing the hailstorm. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're at a family gathering, um, and you're a maximizer and someone just starts getting beneath your skin, you might start getting loud and aggressive, and you might even pick a fight with
Mm-hmm.
someone. Or you might just, if you're the turtle type, you might just just be sitting there quiet, but you're just like really suffering inside and just really uncomfortable, and you just hitting yourself. You're thinking like, I just came back from this personal growth retreat, and I can't even deal with being around my
Mm-hmm.
siblings or my parents.
Right.
So it's important to realize that if you're not feeling safe, and to try to get yourself to a place where you can feel safe. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, the ideal is if you have two people that want to work on it together. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say it's even your sibling or your brother-in-law or your cousin or whoever's there, to be able to have a conversation and work through it together. But assuming that you're kind of doing this on your own and just trying to figure out what can I do to be a better person, what can I do to be healthier in relationships, the first step is awareness, understanding how
Mm-hmm.
you're getting triggered. And also, if you see another person acting out in one of these two ways, you can also have compassion and realize, oh, the reason that this person is being so like pushy and aggressive in our conversation is they're obviously feeling triggered. They're not feeling
Mhm.
safe. So instead of me going and becoming a turtle and going into my shell, what can I do to kind of step out of that and be there and maybe hold space for them and allow them to feel heard and understood?
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of this is easier said than done in the moment.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
is. It is harder to do in the moment, but with
Mhm.
practice,
Mhm.
to stop your reactivity instead of going right into reactive mode. It's what we teach couples and teach anyone, even in business, is to mirror back what the other person said, and that's repeating back what they said. Now, obviously, you have to do this in a way that seems natural. You don't want someone to think that you're playing, therapist on them. Um,
Right.
so, like, if we're teaching someone to do it formally, we would have them say, what I heard you said. What I heard you say is that you're upset with me because of X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Did I get you? You know, is there
Yeah.
more? If we were doing this kind of more casually or trying to, you can say like, oh, it sounds like you're feeling really angry. Like I really push your buttons. Like if they said that, meaning don't just
Mhm.
interpret what you think. Don't analyze them. But
Mhm.
it sounds like you're really mad with me that I didn't call you to
Mhm.
invite you to the party. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
you want, yeah? Is there any more you want to share about that? And it's just like instead of reacting, you're doing something productive to actually make space for the other person. And many times, by hearing someone, they actually will calm down and be less reactive themselves. So, if we change the dynamic, if we become less reactive, then the
Mhm.
other person will be less reactive and there'll be less strife.
Yes. And I think that's a key point too, is the less reactive we are. So if we can control our reactivity in the moment, and sometimes the best thing we can do is not respond or not say anything, especially if we're not well practiced.
Yeah,
Because you did say practice is important. It also seems to me, because you went into a pretty detailed explanation as to how the mind works when that fight or flight comes up, when the emotions come up in that limbic brain. Um, it it seems to me that the educational piece and understanding yourself is an important part of awareness. Um, so I just kind of want to point that out to our listeners. If you need to go back and listen to that explanation at the beginning of this episode again, because it really is, it's important to know how our minds work, and it's important to know how we get so reactive, because I think that's a key component too. At least it was for me for years when I was a lot younger. I didn't understand why I was so reactive. I just reacted all over the place. And it does help, that educational component does help a little bit.
yeah, and listening to it. I mean, even though I am teaching this and working with all the time, it's still important for me to remember that because I will find myself at times if I get, we get kind of sideswiped and it comes out of the blue, like something happens, we just go straight into that
Yeah.
survival mode. So it's just,
Yes.
it's just something to kind of have at the forefront of our mind as much as we
Yes.
can.
Yeah. And our bodies are hardwired for survival because evolutionary, from an evolutionary perspective, we have needed the fight or flight response for so long. And the reality is the world we live in is safer than it's ever been for humans. Like we don't have any natural predators that hunt humans anymore. That's, thousands and thousands of years in our past when we had, saber-toothed tigers or other predators that would hunt us. So our brains are hardwired to create these fight or flight situations. And then our minds also make up the story that something is wrong. So when our body feels the fight or flight, it's easy to make up a story that goes with it. And I think it's important to interrupt that process too.
Yeah, yeah, because we're going to go straight to that
Mm-hmm.
story. And
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
all about it's all about being conscious and intentional and
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it and it's easy to say that, but
Mm-hmm.
the true test is really if you can do that with another person who's pushing your buttons, and to see
Yeah.
the situation for what it is and to have compassion for the other person, to realize that they also have a story. Just they have a story for why they're reacting the way they are.
Yes. We all, yes. And they have a story. We have a story,
Right.
and our story is not necessarily somebody else's story.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so Rabbi Slatkin, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your 5-step action plan.
Sure.
Because I know that you have a book, a 5-step action plan book, and your book, it's been featured on CNN, NPR, Fox News, the Huffington Post, and on Psychology Today. So this 5-step action plan is, making waves out there in the world. So can you tell us a little bit about this action plan?
Sure. So I created it based on just my experience working with couples, and I found that, just trying to, how can I distill the secret ingredients to success for a
Mm-hmm.
couple? Because I've seen couples in all different stages of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and working with them within the context of imago therapy, and just seeing that certain couples are much more successful than others. So I kind of made it really simple for people so that you can just step by step know exactly what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So just to go review the steps, the first step is commitment.
Okay.
And the idea is that if a couple is not committed, it's going to be quite challenging for them to be able to really be focused on
Mm-hmm.
making things work. I've seen couples who've had, the most egregious breaches of trust in a relationship, infidelity, um, and some pretty horrifying stories. People always say, you've never heard a story as difficult as mine, but I've seen them be able to repair, and I'm not afraid of it, of the content, in the sense that if I know that they're committed to the relationship and making it work, couples can get through anything, even though it might be difficult, but they can get through anything. Whereas
Okay.
I've seen couples with, I would say, relatively minor problems in compared to other couples,
Mm-hmm.
and the commitment wasn't there. They didn't really want to be in the relationship. They didn't want to do whatever it took to make it work. And I find that that really makes a difference. It's almost a prerequisite to
Mm-hmm.
success. That if you're committed, the steps and the rest of the steps in the program, the process can help you. But if you really
Okay.
don't want to be there, so sometimes when people they kind of have like one foot out the door, or they have an exit plan, or
Mm-hmm.
they think somebody else could be better, and part of us is realizing
I'm
that like this is
guilty
what
of having one foot out the door and having an
yeah,
exit plan.
yeah. So you know what
Yeah,
it's how it
I
can
am.
impact. Yeah, it impacts
Yeah,
the
I'm
relationship.
guilty that always be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea is that when you make it doesn't mean it's a death sentence. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously there is. I'm not saying that no one should ever get divorced. I mean, that's not my job to say whether someone should get divorced or not. That's every couple's decision. I would say I want to help keep couples together, and there is such an institution called divorce,
Mm-hmm.
but that it should be just an option when people don't feel like giving a try. I feel that there's a lot more work that can be done to save a relationship, and there's a lot of people that are impacted, especially
Mm-hmm.
if you have children. It's not just about you. It's it affects your children, and it affects
Mm-hmm.
generations. And one of the things that always strikes me when I'm working with couples and we revisit their childhood and see the impact on them, it just makes me so sad that how parents can, and I know that parents do the best they can with the tools they have, but how they really can kind of mess up their kids,
Mm-hmm.
and to an extent where the kids have to be dealing with this in their own relationship. And it's just really sad. It's something that could be prevented
Mm-hmm.
if we were if there were better parenting out there, and everyone was just more healthy in
Yeah.
general. So that's the first step. Once a couple is committed to being in the relationship, then okay, how can I be with this person? I don't feel comfortable with them. I don't feel safe. I have a history of negativity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really ready to be with this person. I would need this. I need to be able to cut out all the distractions, and that's called seal the exits. It means
Okay.
any energy leaks that prevent us from being fully present in the relationship. So the obvious exits, of course, if there's infidelity or there's substance abuse or any type of addiction, that's going to really suck the energy out of the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and those need to be closed. But even some more benign exits, like things that we do that are functional, that are normal, like working or
Mm-hmm.
social media or parenting or anything else that is, or eating or exercising, all these things, if they're done for the purpose of avoiding our spouse, and I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to stay at the office for 2 extra hours, I'm going to make myself busy because I really don't want to go home,
Mm-hmm.
that's an exit. Or even talking to people about our relationship, or even talking to
Mm-hmm.
sometimes individual therapy, or even like personal growth work can be an exit, because I don't want to deal with my marriage. I'll work on myself, but like I can't be with this other person. So
Yeah.
it's closing those exits, facing, instead of facing apart, facing each other.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that can be scary if you don't feel safe, if the space doesn't feel safe.
Right.
which therefore leads us to the next logical step, which is detox your marriage. And that's
Okay.
working on removing the negativity, the poison from your relationship, meaning eliminating the criticism and shaming and blaming, and learning to ask for what you need instead of you don't do this, you don't hear me, you don't care about me. I
Hmm.
really need to feel cared. I really need to feel understood. So flipping it around, asking for what you need instead of focusing on what the other person's doing wrong,
Hmm.
eliminating all of the negativity and taking responsibility for yourself. And these are some of the things that we, hopefully we're learning in the personal growth that we should be good at,
Hmm.
and being not a toxic person, being more emotionally mature, and
Right.
bringing that in. Once you clear the space, then it's step number 4. It's called acknowledge the other, and that's the idea that when you're interacting, you're in a relationship with an other, with someone other than yourself. Your spouse is not you; they're not an extension of you. As much as you thought they were when you first fell in love, or you would like them to be, they're different, and it's about being able to acknowledge the differences and acknowledge that all because I want something right now doesn't mean my spouse wants the same thing or is available.
Hmm.
So we acknowledge the other in 2 different ways. This essential teaching we teach in this step is called the Imago dialogue process. But even without it, understanding kind of the spirit of it is that when you're speaking, acknowledging that there is an other, meaning all because I want to share something now or I'm upset doesn't mean you're available to listen. So
Hmm.
checking in, making sure the person's available. Is now a good time to talk? If not, when are you available? So making an appointment, acknowledging that someone else might not want to be available to listen at the time. And then in acknowledging the other when listening, learning how to really listen. And that means, as I mentioned before, mirroring. It's not interacting, it's not even commiserating or trying to fix the problem. It's really being in the other person's space. In theory, saying nothing, but we teach couples to repeat back what the other person said to make
Hmm.
sure they really got it, and validating it makes sense that you feel that way, and empathizing. Imagine you're feeling scared and sad, and it's a scripted process that we walk couples through. But the
Hmm.
idea is that we're acknowledging that this person has a completely different way of looking at things, and it's totally okay. And I can be in their space without responding out of my own anxiety or reactivity. And then the final step is we call it love infusions, and that's all the positive things that we do in relationship. That's about sharing, daily appreciations with each other,
Okay.
performing caring behaviors like learning our partner's love language and practicing daily a few things in that love language to
Okay.
show them what we care, going out on a date night. For some couples, the love infusions is actually the first step because there's such a negative place that they need to put some positivity in there to even get to the place where they want to commit.
Hmm.
But for others, it's like say the icing on the cake.
Okay.
But sometimes all these steps can be done. It's a logical progression, but all of them can be done partially, concurrently, or even in other orders depending on what they need. But we kind of distill. This is what I've seen to be the necessary ingredients for a successful relationship.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that from what you've said, you tend to work with marriages, with that type of relationship. And it sounds to me like these steps, commitment, seal the exits, detox the relationship, acknowledge the other, love infusions, that can be applied to any relationship.
Yeah, for
It,
sure.
absolutely. I
And
mean, it doesn't have to be an intimate, marital relationship. It could be, with your family, your spouse, your friends. It sounds like an excellent way just to reframe any relationship, especially if you're stuck in that rut of negativity. And my goodness, how many of us out in the world are there or have been there?
yeah, for sure. It definitely can be applied.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is fantastic. Now, do you work with people in person? Do you work with people online?
So a combination of both. So the way that I work in my practice, I really believe that, especially when I'm dealing with a lot of couples who are struggling, that
Hmm.
the the weekly, 45-minute or 60-minute sessions is just not enough to cut it, especially when couples are in limbo and you don't have can't afford the time to really see if things will work. So I
Right.
work with couples in an intensive process. So either I do a 2-day intensive, either in person or online,
Okay.
and then we do follow-up sessions online. So we have
Okay.
like a pack included in the program.
Okay.
And then I also have other associates as part of our organization, the Marriage Restoration Project, in other locations around the country, um, also doing the same, following the same 2-day intensive approach, our approach. And then we also do a workshop called the Getting Love You Want workshop. My wife and I do that quarterly in Baltimore, and then we also do that a few times a year in New York, and
Mhm.
we're also willing to travel to other locations. And that's a 2-day intensive. It's a group workshop. It's not group therapy, it's group instruction, but couples break into, go privately around the room, around the hotel, and they do
Mhm.
their work together privately, so no one knows kind of what they're going through. And that's a little bit more of a affordable option for people. And then if people want to do follow-up sessions, we offer an 8-session follow-ups
Okay.
after that. And a lot of those couples would do that online as well.
Okay, fantastic. And so it sounds like, from what you've told me, that you and your wife work together as a team.
Yeah,
With
so we work together. So my wife is not a licensed therapist, so she's not actually allowed to do the therapy, but she's allowed to
Okay,
do the group workshop with me. And she
okay.
definitely knows because we've done this work ourselves as a couple. That's how
Hmm.
we got into it. So she's
Right,
very knowledgeable about it, and she's is a big asset to the group
right.
workshop.
Well, the experience of going through a program is, I, I just can't even put to words how valuable experience is. I've found myself over the years, and I've even mentioned this on past episodes, where I found myself working with therapists or working with people who are trying to teach me a process or take me through a process where they haven't been there themselves.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, what a disaster that's been. So, yeah, so I wouldn't trust working with a therapist anymore, licensed or not, whether, if they hadn't been through the process themselves that they're trying to take me through. You can't take somebody anywhere you've never been.
No, it makes sense. And we always tell couples that we're not here to teach you, at least in the group workshop. This is a journey that we're going on with you. We've been there.
Mm-hmm.
We know what it's like to be in your shoes. We know how hard it
Yes.
is to not respond. Like, we can really
Yeah.
empathize with what they're going through.
Hmm.
And we also believe, we know that it works because we're the spokesman for the success of
Yeah.
the process, and besides the couples we work with. So it's
Hmm.
definitely much more powerful. I remember when I was in school, um, they used to have, for certain programs, they used to have, you had to do your own therapy
Hmm.
to get your degree. Now they've changed that for some of the programs, so they don't require it. And I think it's just so powerful. It's like, if you really want to help somebody, you
Hmm.
have to be able to know that it works and see that it works, not just something that you learned in some theory.
Right. Yes, exactly. I'm doing trainings myself, and we are required, in my trainings, to have our own personal sessions,
That's
um,
great.
because how do you know? And it's so different practicing with another student in the class than it is to be in the client seat with a therapist in a personal scenario versus, practicing with another student. It's totally different. So I think it's so important. And I emphasize that to my listeners all the time. Pay attention, ask your therapists, if they've gone through this process themselves,
Right.
because that is so, so important. Um, and do you work only with married couples?
So no, any couple that's, I mean, I say I have couples that are they've been divorced, they're already divorced, and they want to work together to,
Okay.
know what to do about their kids and be able to work together and create some peace.
Mm-hmm.
I work with, I would say, families in the sense of adult children and their parents.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in a business, any relationship where people need to be able to feel safe and communicate and understand each other better, I've seen this to be a successful tool.
Okay. Okay.
But
Well,
I mean, it was mostly with couples, but for sure, I have experience working with others and, those
mhm.
other populations, and it definitely is effective. I
Okay.
think we could use it in you know, the government too. We could
Yes.
getting the two parties together in this country. Yeah.
Oh, we sure could. I
Yeah.
hope somebody's listening and
Yeah.
somebody takes you up on that. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, because we do, just as a nation, I think we need to learn to step across the proverbial aisle and learn to work, with those who don't agree with us.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and do you have any insight as to why that's become such a chasm in our country?
Well, I think it's, I mean, I'm not trying to be judgmental at all, but I think there's a certain like immaturity that we all have,
Hmm.
and I think comes from a wounded place
Hmm.
that we just feel that you know the way it's a lot safer for us to feel that everybody thinks the same way that we do, and if you don't think the way you don't believe like I do, you're a heretic or you're a racist or you're
Hmm.
or anarchist or whatever side of the aisle.
Yeah.
I'm not being political or picking it on any party. I think both are guilty.
Hmm.
It's just this. It's much safer to feel that everybody thinks the same way that I do, but
Hmm.
it's a very self-absorbed way of looking at things, and it's being able to. It's a real paradigm shift to be able to see that you can have both sides can have validity. You
Hmm.
can hear the story that, hey, I can totally understand why you would vote for this party based on you know,
Hmm.
your story, and I would totally understand why the other person would vote for the opposite party. To
Yeah.
be able to see that gray, I think it takes some maturity, and I
Yeah.
think that a lot of us are just you know immature and kind of wrapped up in our own selves that can't get
Right.
beyond that. So
Yeah. And I think we used to have that in this country, much more so than we do now. And I think a lot of us are looking back over history and trying to figure out, where did we lose that? Where did we lose the ability to just have a relationship or a friendship with somebody that we don't agree with 100%?
well, I do think now that you're saying that, I'm just like, why would it be different? I think there's a lot of, I mean, I think the media, I mean, we have much more access. We know much more now. I mean, we have
Hmm.
access. We know everything that's going on all over the world every second of the day.
Hmm.
And we're just bombarded with information from all sides, all different opinions. And I think we just get wrapped up in fear. I think the people are
Hmm.
we're living in that reptile brain. There's so
Yeah.
much fear, like, what's going to happen if so and so they're going to ruin the country, or this one's going to ruin the country, or this one's going to ruin the country, and
Yes.
we're all going to die. All there's so much
Yep.
fear and propaganda, and I think that because we have much more access to it than
Hmm.
in years past, it's just so bombarded that we get wrapped up in that frenzy. And I
Yeah.
mean, I remember people just get wrapped up in these like, conspiracy theories, and it becomes very scary.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah. It's almost circling back around to your explanation of the triune brain theory with the reptilian brain and, the limbic brain, the cortical brain, and how they all interact and being aware. And because we have to become aware, not only in our relationships with our partners, but also in our relationships with the larger collective, because that also is a relationship and how we interact when we go out in public.
yeah, so it's about being present and
Hmm.
tuning out all the noise, because when we have all this noise, we're in that reptilian brain. When
Hmm.
we can be present and have that kind of peace of mind and be able to really you know be there with another person and hear them and experience them, and not just
Yeah.
make up these stories based on what we heard on the news.
Yeah.
It can really change the whole way that we interact, and see what was really reality, and not what
Mhm.
someone else wanted us to spin for us as the reality.
Right. So when somebody has so much of that fearful noise inside their head and it's just constant, what is the first step that somebody can take to interrupt that process and start to have some awareness and gain a little bit of control over themselves?
First step is to turn off the news. Yeah,
uh,
I'm serious. I mean, to
Excellent advice.
stop getting. I mean, it was just like, I mean,
Hmm.
I can be guilty of it too. It's like,
Hmm.
and then they repeat the same thing over and over again. So you just like, when is the
Yeah.
next new report coming out about this or that?
Yeah.
Um, just like kind of getting out of turn off the madness, disconnect,
Hmm.
take some time to be quiet, uh, and not
Yes.
get wrapped up in that. I think that's the first thing, to learn to be
Yeah.
able to do that. I think it's very hard, and especially with our
Mm.
phones and everything now. We don't even have to just like go on the TV or go on a computer. We have it
Yeah.
with us all the time. So to be
Right.
able to make time for ourselves every day where we are disconnected from all of that, that's the first step to be able to see that we kind of can disconnect.
Yeah.
And then for other people, sometimes it's helpful just to practice breathing, or do
Hmm.
some type of meditation, or reading, quiet time,
Yeah.
and then be able to have real conversations with people,
Hmm.
um, and
Yes.
meet people that are different than you.
Right. And
And
commenting on Facebook, listeners, is not a real conversation, just FYI.
yeah, I mean, I see nowadays, I mean, teens, it's like, like their relationships are, texting each other. And
Yes.
I like getting together in person, and it's really changed our society. I mean, I think even in the last 10 years, 15 years, it's a whole new world.
Yeah, it sure
Yeah.
is. Yes.
So there are a lot of wonderful things, like you have people can access your,
Mhm,
your podcasts and Facebook Live, and it's great. We can
mhm,
disseminate more information and healing in the world, and it's really wonderful.
mhm.
And at the same time, we have to have some type, also some responsibility of being able
Yeah.
to filter out and be able to still have that time where we can connect one-on-one with real, in person people.
Yes. It's that emotional homeostasis is what I call it. Yeah.
Yeah, emotional.
Yeah, where we have some sort of emotional balance, and realizing whenever we're getting overwhelmed, because it's easy to get lost in the scrolling on Facebook, or I have a news app on my phone. I only have one, but it's easy just to flip through article after article and read the headlines and get lost in the scrolling. It's so easy to do that
Yeah,
and get overwhelmed by everything, and you don't realize you're stuck in the hamster wheel sometimes.
yeah,
And it's hard to imagine that you don't realize that you're stuck in overwhelm, and I think so many of us are there that we don't realize we're stuck in overwhelm.
yeah. It's really hard. It's sometimes I think about it, and I'm thankful just as as a Sabbath observant Jew that once a week I do not have we don't go on electronics. Like we're
Hmm.
completely disconnected
Hmm.
from the outside world just for for a day. Just and
Yeah.
and people think, oh, why is it rest? Why is it work to turn on your phone? But
Hmm.
we're really having real peace of mind and rest by being disconnected from all the distractions and all the things that get us worked up,
Hmm.
and really interacting with with God and with other people, with family, with friends.
Yes.
Um, so it's just I don't know if I didn't have that, I mean, I would just keep going and going and going. I would be worried about that. So
Right.
everybody has to create. I'm not saying everybody has to take a day off, but just even if a day off or a time of the day to make it sacred for yourself
Hmm.
and not kind of get wrapped up in the rat race.
Yes, and I love that you point that out, because it is so important to find out what brings you peace in your own life and to implement that. Even if it's once a week, like you said, one day a week or a little bit each day, whatever that looks like, find out what works for you and do that for yourself. And that
Yeah,
that really that's an act of self-love, and that fosters the relationship with the self, which is just as important, maybe even more important than the relationship we have with others.
yeah, because if you're not healthy, then there's nobody there to be in relationship with someone else. So you have to definitely
Right.
take care of yourself.
Yes. And I know some of my listeners are going to have questions.
Sure.
So you're a rabbi. Um, just to be clear with all of my listeners, do you work with other religions or, secular, non-religious people?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I happen to
Okay.
be an ordained rabbi. I don't have a pulpit anywhere.
Okay.
Um, I work with couples from all different backgrounds, all different
Okay.
religions, cultural backgrounds.
Okay.
This is not a religious work.
Hmm.
I find that helping people connect is a spiritual process, but
Hmm.
I don't bring in God into the work that I do with couples unless they want me to. Some people come because they want, even non-Jewish couples come because they want,
Hmm.
specifically because they want somebody who maybe has a spiritual bent. But I
Okay.
work with people that are, atheists, and
Hmm. Okay.
the idea is we're all in a relationship. We're all human beings, and we all have the same challenges, and
Yeah.
in that sense.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to put that out there and just be really clear in case
Yeah,
any of our
that's
listeners
fine.
had questions, and then that way nobody would wonder or not reach out to you if they had any question.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand that you're going to offer a discount on the no blame, no shame marriage communication video training.
Yes.
Yeah. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Sure. So the video training, it's actually based on the book, the 5-Step Action Plan. It actually includes a PDF copy of the book.
Okay.
So it's based on the 5 steps, but we have audios and an audio slideshow for each step where we take it a little bit further than we do in the book,
Mm-hmm.
give you some more ideas and thoughts about it. And then we also, of course, the video aspect is we have a full-length professional video where my wife and I actually demonstrate some of the processes that we teach in the program, specifically step 4, acknowledge the other, to actually learn how to have the imago dialogue with each other, be able to talk about any issue, and also the appreciations dialogue, which is an important ritual. We also have a lot of different smaller videos where you can see us working out our own issues together, so you can see a real life scenarios, as well as the PDF book and the workbook.
Okay, fantastic. And so I will make sure that I put the link up in the show notes
Okay.
For that. And yeah, so thank you very much for offering a discount on that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, for our
And
listeners.
it's something that couples that, if you're not in, you don't feel like you want to necessarily need to get help, professional help, but you want to work on your relationship, it's a great affordable way to implement some of the tools that we talked about on the call today.
Okay.
And even if your spouse is not willing to go to help with you, a lot of people have done this program on their own, and it's been helpful for them in terms of being a better partner.
Okay.
And that in turn changes the relationship.
Okay. And is there a discount code that they'll need?
I think if you show me the link that you have, it could be that I gave you the link to the discount page. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's totalmarriagetransformation.com, option 8, PXGELDH.
Okay, so that might be the actual discount. If for some reason
that is the discount link. Okay.
I believe it is. Yeah, but for some reason it's
perfect.
Not, then just feel free to contact us directly, and we'll help you with that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll check that out before I put the show notes up.
Okay.
I'll double check it. So
okay, super.
Thank you so much for
my
clarifying
pleasure.
that. Yes. Yeah, I think this has been a fantastic conversation. And I think a lot of it circles back to education and awareness.
Right.
Those are the first steps, is learn a little bit about like yourself and how your mind works and why we're so reactive. Because it's part of our biology, and we can override our biology with a little bit of awareness of how our biology works. If we're not aware of it and we're not educated about it, at least at a basic level, then that becomes our hidden control panel.
Sure.
And then we just react all over the place.
Right. And we're not really being human.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So, Shlomo, thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And before we finally sign off, do you have any final tips or bits of wisdom you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
I guess just as the holidays come up, and you may be in some uncomfortable situations, just do your best to understand that everybody has a story, and everybody is born, no one's born mean, or we're born joyfully alive, and just have compassion that there's something deeper there beneath the surface, even if you don't know what it is, even if the other person's not going to share with you what it is. But just imagine in your mind that this person's really hurting, and that's why they're hurting you, or doing things, and then that will help you come from a place of compassion and curiosity instead of just judgment and reactivity. And it's just a great kind of way to frame your mind when you're entering a potentially contentious situation.
Fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Shlomo.
You're welcome.
Yes. And so for any of you who are going to family gatherings, feel free to rewatch the raw, unedited live version that's going to be up on Facebook. Or if you want the edited version, like I said, it will go up live next week at jenniferwhitacre.com/podcast. And I will see you all next week. And we do have another recording coming up soon for our first week in December. So be sure to catch that live on Facebook as well. Thank you and have a great day.
We have just concluded another episode of the Yes and podcast with Jennifer Whitacre. For additional resources, please visit our website, jenniferwhitacre.com. Leave a review if you enjoyed the show and find it useful. Until next time, continue challenging conventional thinking and keep moving forward.